All right, let's talk a little bit about something new. It's called a conditional statement. You have heard of these before, probably. You've just called them something different, possibly. You maybe called them an if-then statement, but it's just called a conditional now. So the way we write a conditional statement is like this: P and then an arrow and then a Q. And that means if P, then Q, or it also means P implies Q. And it has two parts, the first part and the second part, right? And this first part is called the hypothesis. And that is the one that is immediately following the word if. So whatever words come after if is the hypothesis, and then the conclusion is whatever words come right after the word then. So let's take a look at some examples. So this one is, if you live in Nashville, then you live in Tennessee. So the hypothesis is all the words right after if. So the hypothesis is you live in Nashville. And the conclusion is everything after the then. So that's you live in Tennessee. So let's take a look at another one. The sum of the measures of two angles is 90 degrees. If the sum of the measure of two angles is 90 degrees, then they are complementary angles. So the hypothesis is this part, the sum of the measure. So and then the conclusion would be that they are complementary angles. Okay, this one, same thing. Hypothesis is going to be a quadrilateral as a square because it's the words directly following the word if. And then the conclusion is it has 4 right angles. All right, so let's look at writing some conditional statements from just regular statements. So we just have to make them in if-then form. So obviously they have to have a hypothesis and a conclusion. So the first one is, if an angle or an obtuse angle has a measure greater than 90 degrees. So we're going to take this first part, an obtuse angle, and we're going to say if an angle is obtuse, then it has a measure greater than 90 degrees. All right, so let's take a look at this one. All numbers divisible by 4 are also divisible by 2. So we're going to find the if part, which is just going to be the first part. If a number is divisible by 4, we'll write that in red for our hypothesis. And then our conclusion, then it's also divisible by 2. All right, this one, states on the East Coast border the Atlantic Ocean. So we're going to start with the first part of it. If a state is on the East Coast, then it borders the Atlantic Ocean. This one's a little tricky. So this says Valentine's Day is in February. So we need to take the first part of this sentence and make it into an if statement. So the only one I could think of would be if it's Valentine's Day. Then it is in February. All right, and finally, prime numbers only have two factors, 1 and itself. So prime numbers is going to be part of our hypothesis. If a number is prime, then it only has two factors. 1 and itself. So these are conditional statements. Basically, the first part says, if this is true, then this part is true. And so you can take any of these statements and switch them into if-then. And then in the next video, we will talk about writing the converse of these statements.